Now we are going to work on the, cover. So, and the binding system as well. So, for your cover, you'll need 2 pieces of chipboard that measure 11 by 8.5, so 2 of those. And again, you can kind of wobble them, but they're pretty thick, okay? So 2 of those. You will also need 2 pieces that measure 11 by 4, and then 1 that measures 11 by 3 3/4. Okay, now I've already got score tape on the back of each of these because we're going to wrap them now. So these are quite large covers, so I'm using, it's the only time I'm be using 12 by 12 inch paper. So we are going to adhere, let's get this out of the way. We're going to adhere the chipboard down onto the cardstock, and then we're going to kind of wrap around it. Ideally, I would prefer to have 1 inch all the way around as opposed to 1/2 inch, but because these are 11, I couldn't find paper bigger than 12 by 12, so we're going to work with it. So remove the score tape backing from the back. We'll put it on first and then remove the backing. I just wanted to save a little bit of time. You don't need to watch me put score tape on the back here. You can also use a wet adhesive if you'd prefer. I tend to make a mess with it, so I don't use it as often. Okay, now center it as best you can. So there's 1/2 inch on either side, on all sides. Okay, and then we're going to add score tape all the way around the edge. Now, a lot of people wrap their entire cover at the same time. I'm wrapping each of the pieces individually, and then I'm going to adhere them to each other using Tyvek. You can wrap the entire cover together if you so desire, but it's a pretty big cover, so I find this much easier. And if you don't have Tyvek, when we get to that point, you can also do it just with cardstock. So now I'm just mitering the corners and leaving a little space between the actual edge where I've cut and the chipboard itself, just a little tiny space there. Okay, and now we're going to kind of train each side, like to fold a little bit, just to make it easier. Okay, and then remove the backing, and we're going to kind of do that same thing, pull it forward. There we go, and do the other long side. And now before you do the other sides, kind of like use your scissors or something and just kind of push that little tiny edge in so that it doesn't create a point. You want it to be a nice round smooth corner, so kind of push it in just a little bit. It's hard to see there. I'm just kind of pushing in that corner so it doesn't point out. Okay, and then the corners should meet up perfectly. Oh, the light in here is just horrible, sorry. At some point I'll be able to afford a better a better place with better light. But living where I live, it's incredibly expensive. So living by myself, I just have not been able to find a really good studio space yet. But we're getting there. We're getting there. Okay, so that is what it will look like. We're going to do the same process with the other big one. Well, with all of the pieces actually. Okay, so do the big one. For each of the chipboard pieces, you're just going to cut a piece of cardstock that is an inch larger, both widthwise and lengthwise for each piece. So you have a 1/2 inch border all the way around. Okay, so following the same process. Okay, your first one. And then push in the little corners. If you forget this step, it's not really a big deal, it's just a little extra something. Okay, so there we go, there's the other one. Now we'll do the same with the smaller pieces. These are the two. Oh. So this piece would measure 5 by 12 because it's 4 by 11. I just realized I'm throwing all the pieces of score tape backing behind me and they're all landing on my cat and he's just sound asleep. Completely oblivious that he's covered in score tape backing. He's a crafting cat. He's okay with it. And I need some more score tape. There we go. So it's the exact same process with the smaller pieces. Just like that. So the corners should all meet up. Alright, and I'm just going to do the other two off camera. You know what you're doing now. So same process for each one of them, and I'll be right back. Okay, so you should now have 5 pieces all covered. So the way you lay it out is one of the 4" over here, and then one of the 8.5 by 11. 4" as the spine, 8.5 by 11, 3 3/4 by 11 over here. Okay, so we're going to start on the far side here, and I'm going to use Tyvek strips. So I've cut long pieces of Tyvek. I've just cut an envelope. This is where the envelope would have bent, here and here, and I've just cut strips, put score tape on the back. If you cannot find Tyvek, I've heard a lot of people are having trouble finding Tyvek. You can use cardstock, although it doesn't maneuver as well. You can use like a vinyl or some other kind of like fabric that won't rip, like a heavier fabric. You can use, I know at the dollar store, a lot of dollar stores have like grocery bags that are like almost a kind of like a heavy cloth plastic material. I don't know how to describe it. Any kind of material that is really flexible, that is super thin and it is tear resistant, you can use. Tyvek, though, it is available at most office supply stores. I get mine from a company, it's a Canadian company called Uline, so that's where I get mine. But it is fairly readily available. I'm not sure why it seems to be a tricky thing to find. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to lay our piece of Tyvek, if that's what you're using, or whatever material you're using, down, and we are going to adhere our one of the 4" and one of the 8.5" on top of it. You want to make sure there is about a 1/4 inch of space in between. Okay, so you want a big space because you want this to be able to fold really nicely. And then I'm just going to bring the sides, or the top and bottom I mean, over like this. Now if your material you're using is not as long as mine and doesn't connect, you can just, you know, go to here and here and then put another piece over that. But there we have it. So it's really flexible, but also very strong. Like it is not going anywhere. Okay, so we're going to do that to the next piece. So another piece of Tyvek or whatever material you're using. And we're going to try and center it without sticking to it and put there we go, so adhere the other side of that 8.5 piece, and then the other 4-inch, so this is your spine, again leaving that gap in between them, and then folding these over. And they don't have to be perfect. All of this is going to be covered with patterned paper. Alright, so you're not going to see, you're only going to see a tiny little bit of Tyvek just on the, like, where it bends. Okay, and then the next piece. So now we're adhering the spine to the other 8.5 inch. So the front cover, or I guess that would technically be the back cover, but the other cover. Come on, there we go. Okay, so now these strips, I have them at 2 inches wide. I find that's about perfect because then you have about 3/4 of an inch at least attaching to the chipboard, and with that gap in the center, so maybe a little, yeah, so around that. Alright, and then the last piece, and then this is the 3 3/4 inch piece. Oh, that wasn't entirely straight, but okay, so the way it's going to fold up is your pages will be right here, and then this is going to go over like that. Okay, so now we can set this aside for a second and we will create our expandable binding, and then we will add our pages and continue working, etc. Okay, so for the expandable binding, we need a piece of paper, cardstock, that is 10 inches by 12 inches. We need our scoreboard. So put it on the 12-inch side, and we are going to score at 1 inch, 2.5 inches, 4 inches, 8 inches, 9.5, and 11. Okay, so again, that was 1, 2.5, 4, 8, 9.5, 11. Okay, and now we're going to flip our piece over, and we are going to score again at 1 3/4, 3 1/4, 8 3/4, 10 1/4. Okay, so again, that was 1 3/4, 3 1/4, 8 3/4, and 10 1/4. Okay, so you've got a piece that now has a whole bunch of score lines like that. And now we want to, I'm going to cover mine in Tyvek to make it really, really strong. You don't necessarily have to do that, but it really does help. So I'm just gonna, I just realized I don't have a piece of Tyvek cut, so I'm just gonna quickly do that. Okay, so I've got my piece of Tyvek cut to approximately 10 by 12. I made it just a tiny bit smaller so it wouldn't go over the edge of the cardstock. And I've got score tape all over it, everywhere that shiny bit is, and I'm just removing the backing now. And then we are going to adhere it onto the cardstock. So here's your cardstock. Put it on the side you want it on is where these two score lines, are the ones with the big space in between. These two are showing the mountain side, and the very far edge ones are showing the mountain side. So that's the side that you want to put this on. So very carefully adhere this down. And smooth it out. Oh, I think I still made it just a tiny bit too big. I might have to cut a tiny bit off. Use your bone folder. I have used duct tape in the past as well, and it works. It's a little bit thick, but it does. You can definitely use duct tape for around the cover. That's another option. Oh, it's pretty good. There's only a tiny bit showing there. That's all right. Excellent. Okay, so now that that is done, now we need to fold and crease all of those score lines. Now, because we've got the Tyvek on there, you're going to have to really crease them because they're going to be a little bit stubborn. So it's basically like an accordion fold that we're doing here. Okay, so it looks like that. And then the other side. I thought I chipped my nail, but I didn't. I'm okay. My manicure is still good. It's just permanent marker that I can handle. Okay, so now you have something that looks like that. Okay, so this is going to sit onto your spine, just like that. Okay, and then your pages are going to sit on top of that. Okay, so and then this way, when the pages are there, this will be able to move back and forth a little bit and make it so the pages lie flat. Okay, so let's put our pages, let's attach our pages together because we're doing a page-to-page binding system. So set both the cover and the binding system aside for a second and we'll work with the pages. So these 3/4 inch flaps here, these are going to attach to each other. Okay, they're going to overlap like that so that there's 3/4 of an inch between each of the pages. All right, so I'm going to use red line tape for this. Okay, so I'm using red line tape because it's super high tack. You can also use glue, but I just don't like waiting for the glue to dry. It just takes forever, so I'm too impatient for that. So what I'm going to do is put a couple strips on the 3/4 inch part. Okay, so this is page 2 that I'm putting it on. Okay, see that there? And I'm just going to trim off this little extra bit. Alright, and I'm just going to use my thumb to make sure it's really on there. Now I'm going to remove the backing. Now feel free, if you want to do more embellishing on your pages, feel free to do that before we put the pages together. I'm going to do some more embellishing, but I'm going to do it when the pages are together. So make sure that 1/2 of this is out of the way. You're just adhering just the one part of that 3-inch section, okay? And we're going to adhere it right down on top. Okay, so you see what happened there? Now the two of them are attached together and they each have a half, the 3/4 inch from the other side that is still free, but they are together. Alright, so we're going to do the same thing with the next page. So we're going to add some red line tape to this side. So this is page 4. So we're going to add red line tape to this part on page 4. Okay, I'm just going to trim that little excess that I have there. Perfect. Okay, and remove the backing. And then we'll take just the one, hold this part back, this other 3/4 inch section, hold it back, and we're going to adhere this down to where we just put the red line tape. And make sure that you always have your page right side up. I've actually attached a page upside down once. Oh, it was such a huge pain in the petunia to try and fix that. Oh my goodness. So make sure it's the right way up first before attaching it, especially with this red line tape. Once it is down, that's it. Okay, so there we go. So now we've got these pages attached together, and we do it one more time for the last page. Okay. Move the backing. And this last page here. Alright, so now your pages are all attached together.